chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Dreier, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 5 minutes to revise and extend.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, back in 2009, my good friend and the co-chair of the House Democracy Partnership, David Price of North Carolina, and I had the opportunity to visit former General and at that time U.S. Ambassador Carl Eikenberry, ambassador to Afghanistan. We were at the ambassador's residence in Kabul, and I was struck with a statement that was made by General Ambassador Eikenberry. He said, "We have a tendency as Americans to express appreciation to men and women in uniform, those men and women who served in our nation's armed forces around the world. But too rarely do we extend our appreciation to the men and women who represented the United States of America in the Foreign Service as diplomats around the world." And General Eikenberry encouraged us to do that, and Mr. Price and I have consistently done that in the visits of the House Democracy Partnership to the 17 countries with which we've partnered over the past 7 years. And I have to say that 3 years later, just a few months ago, Mr. Price and I were leading a delegation to Afghanistan, and we recounted that story to our great diplomat, Ryan Crocker, the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan. And Ambassador Crocker, when we shared the story with him, reminded us that more U.S. ambassadors have been killed since the Vietnam War than generals or admirals. We know that down at the Harry S. Truman building, there is a plaque that lists the name of the 231 U.S. diplomats who've been killed since the first death in 1780. And Madam Speaker, I have to say that the news that we have of the tragic death of Ambassador Chris Stevens in Benghazi, the U.S. consulate in Libya, is very sad news for all of us. You know, the upheaval in the Arab world has brought about many great things. For the first time in millennia, there are individuals who have been able to participate in elections and make decisions. But then we get the sad and tragic news that Ambassador Stevens and, according to the early reports, 2 Marines, maybe another Foreign Service officer, were killed in this tragic attack. And I would like to say that we have spent time there. We were just in Libya, Mr. Price and I, just a few weeks before Ambassador Stevens arrived. And Libya is a place that has held out great promise. I am determined, as I know Mr. Price is, to ensure that the promise that we saw several weeks ago in Libya will not be shattered by the tragic death of Ambassador Stevens. And Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to be joined by my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Price, and would like to yield to him at this point.
I thank my colleague for yielding. Mr. Dreier and I have partnered for many years in this work of the House Democracy Partnership, which we and many others in this body believe in very deeply, that we need to be good colleagues, not just nationally but internationally. And we need to reach out in ways that can strengthen democracy, strengthen representative institutions in countries that are friends of our country, and we can help bring those parliaments along. That's exactly why we visited Libya back in the spring. A delegation led by Mr. Dreier. We were there a few weeks before Ambassador Stevens arrived, and I think it's fair to say that we were struck by the promise of Libya. Of course, they've had 42 years of dictatorial rule. The country has been liberated. There are still major challenges, obviously security challenges, as we are learning in a tragic way today. But the country is gradually being secured. Constituent assembly elections have been held, and parliamentary elections are on the way. So we have great hope for Libya, and we will be a friend to Libya. We have been and we will be a friend to Libya in bringing forward the promise of the Arab Spring. But our purpose here today is to mark this tragic loss, the sixth, I believe, ambassador in U.S. history to be killed in the line of duty. Our personnel in Libya are dedicated personnel, the best that the U.S. has to offer. The work that they're doing there is work that's in the national interest and work that is very, very valuable to Libya and to us. And this horrible tragedy is one that we want to mark in this House here today.
And I thank my friend for his contribution. Madam Speaker, if I may simply extend condolences to the loved ones of Ambassador Stevens, and to say that we need to ensure that those who are responsible for this tragic death are brought to justice, and we need to do everything that we can to continue to encourage the development of the rule of law, self-determination, political pluralism, and as Mr. Price has just said, the development of democratic institutions around the world. It's a universal right, and the United States of America is the single best model for that. So our thoughts and prayers again are with the loved ones of Ambassador Stevens. And I yield back.